there! Today we're going to talk about Dalvik and RAT, two different ways Android has used to run apps. Why did Android switch from Dalvik to RAT? What changed under the hood? And how does it affect your phone speed, battery life, and app performance? To make it simple, imagine your phone is a school, and the way students, your apps, prepare for tests, execution has changed over the time. Dalvik, the student who crams before every test, just-in-time compilation. Back in the day, Android used Dalvik virtual machine. Dalvik followed the just-in-time compilation approach. Imagine a student who doesn't study ahead of time. Instead, they cram right before every test. As soon as the exam starts, they quickly flip through their notes and try to memorize everything. This works, but it's slow and exhausting. The student is always rushing, making mistakes, and using more energy than necessary. That's exactly how Dalvik worked. Instead of preparing apps ahead of time, it compiled pieces of the app's code on the fly while you were using it. Let's talk about pros. Takes up less storage since apps are not precompiled. Works well on devices with limited space. What about cons? Apps open slower because they need to be compiled in real time. Consumes more battery since the phone is constantly compiling code. Performance is inconsistent, sometimes smooth, sometimes laggy. Google realized this was inefficient and decided to create the better way to run apps. RAT, the student who studies before the exam, ahead of time compilation. Then came RAT, Android Runtime, which replaced Dalvik. RAT studies for the test in advance instead of waiting until the last minute. This student reviews all their notes the night before, so when the test starts, they can answer everything instantly. This is called ahead of time compilation. RAT compiles the entire app when you install it, so when you open the app, the code is already optimized and ready to run. When did Android switch to RAT? RAT was introduced as an experimental runtime in Android 4.4 KitKat, but it's officially replaced Dalvik as the default runtime in Android 5.0 Lollipop 2014. From Android 5.0 onward, all devices use RAT instead of Dalvik. Pros and cons of RAT. Pros. Apps launch much faster because they don't need to be compiled at runtime. Smoother performance since the app isn't constantly processing code. Saves battery because the phone does less work while running apps. Cons. Uses more storage because apps are precompiled. Takes longer to install apps since compilation happens right after downloading. But overall, RAT made Android much faster and more efficient, which is why it completely replaced Dalvik. What happens under the hood? Dalvik, just-in-time compilation. With Dalvik, apps were stored in a special format called DEX, Dalvik Executable, which was optimized for low memory usage. When you open an app, Dalvik compiled parts of the code into machine language at runtime, but only the parts you were using at that moment. If you switch screens or perform a different action, it had to compile new parts of the code on the fly. This made app launch slow and wasted CPU power. RAT, ahead of time compilation. RAT also uses DEX, but instead of waiting until you open the app, RAT compiles the entire app into native machine code right after installation. This means that when you launch the app, it's already compiled and ready to run, making it much faster because the code doesn't need to be translated in real time. RAT uses less battery and CPU power. Downside is that apps take up more space on the device because the compiled code is stored alongside the original DEX files. Why did Android switch to RAT? Android switched from Dalvik to RAT because users wanted faster, smoother experiences. Dalvik was fine for older, low storage phones, but as apps became more complex, just-in-time compilation wasn't fast enough. RAT made everything feel snappier, especially when launching apps and switching between screens. Battery life improved because less CPU power was wasted on runtime compilation. Even though RAT takes takes up more storage and makes app installation a bit slower, the overall performance boost was worth it. Conclusion: Dalvik from Android 1 to Android 4.4 KitKat. The student who crams last minute, slow up lunchtime, high battery use. RET, Android 5.0, Lollipop and later. The student who studies in advance, fast app launch, better performance. This is all for me for today. See you in the next videos. Bye!